Outer Orange.
Welcome back, everybody. OuterOrange here, and I am for once not very orange. Well, actually, I'm normally not very orange, but I'm even extra un-orange. I was going to do like a whole Victorian type of look for you guys with the deck profile that I provide for you, but I couldn't find my Victorian dress, so I decided to stick with pastel because that makes a lot of sense, right? It makes absolutely no sense. We are here to discuss the VPREMIUM Nightmare Doll deck profile. I've been winning with this, I've been streaming with it. Actually, a lot of my versus fights and remote have been revolved around this deck. So I thought it was about time I actually give you guys what the profile looks like. I haven't actually discussed this on the channel. I discussed the old version a while ago, but I've never actually talked about the new stuff with everything. I made videos about being excited about the cards, but I never actually showed you guys a deck profile of it. So let's go and do that today. Alright, so I'm here. Here we are. Of course, we're doing traditions as per usual. I got my deck box here for you guys. So this is the Order a Rabbit deck box. I think this is adorable. I got it from a friend of mine. It's really cute. It's kind of old. I've had it for a little bit now, and I've been using this for my Nightmare dolls as, I don't know, I just think it's cute, and I just kind of like it. I don't know. I don't really have an excuse for this one. And then aside from the deck box, the sleeves I'm using is actually the Vanguard sleeves. Amazon was selling these for really cheap, so I actually picked up a lot of these as I play a lot of Pale Moon decks. I have so many Pale Moon decks that it actually made sense to me to just get a lot of the same sleeves. So that way, if I want to create another stage list, I can. If I want to create just any list, I can just do it. So that's what this is for. So let's go ahead and talk about our dolls today. Grade 3s. This is Nightmare Doll Carroll, your main boss unit. This is the unit that does everything for you. This is your go-to card. When placed on Vanguard, you can look at top 5 cards of your deck and take a doll that like has to be a workoid. It states like in these little brackets like workoid, and you put it into your soul. If it is a grade 3 workoid, you can just bring it out, and now you have another attacker, so you don't have to use your hand as much, which is really nice. And your grade 3s are the main combo units of this deck, so you really want to make sure you have your grade 3s, and getting them in top 5 is beautiful, as you can secure the ones in your hand. This is just only the beginning of the engine, because she actually has a secondary skill. It says, when a grade 3 rearguard, not specifically workoid, a grade 3 rearguard is put from rearguard into soul, you can actually counterblast, discard 2 cards, and take a grade 3 workoid from your soul and ride it. So essentially she restands, and you can actually, if you have another copy of herself in soul, you can actually restand with another Carroll, and that top 5 skill, which is when placed, actually activates. So you can actually keep looping her and looping her. As long as you have counterblast, you can keep looping her herself, enabling more attacks, enabling more accel markers, and you do you go even. If you go accel 2, you will not go negative. You'll actually keep cycling. So if you have a really bad hand and you just want to cycle through your Carrolls, you can actually do that by discarding your bad hand and hope you draw into better cards. But this card's pretty much just a staple. And by the way, like I said, the second skill is any grade 3, so it doesn't have to specifically be a workoid. So if you were to run other grade 3s, as long as you can get them into soul, you are allowed to do that. Nightmare Doll Chelsea. Nightmare Doll Chelsea has made the deck overall a lot better. She really kind of helps with the engine. There's a couple other stuff that added to make the engine better. But Chelsea's skill is, at the end of the battle she attacked, you can... At her rear guard, she has a rear guard and a Vanguard skill, so she will work off a Carroll if you rewrite Carroll and into Chelsea. But you can also do it with just. But Chelsea also has a rear guard skill on her own. She says at the end of the battle she attacked, she puts herself into soul and then takes a unit on your opponent's board and puts it into soul too. It's not mandatory, but you can choose to do it. So in case you don't want to give them soul, you don't have to. But just letting you know, she literally just puts herself into soul, and there's actually no cost for this. The cost is just her going into soul. So it's extremely free, which enables the restand of Carroll, as she is a grade 3, and enabling that stuff. And she is a workoid, so on top of the fact that she enables Carroll's skill, you can also then rewrite into her and go into her Vanguard skill. Her Vanguard skill states, at the end of the battle she attacked, you can counterblast and bring out 2 dolls from your soul to the board. And if you guys are both on grade 3, each of those dolls gets an extra 10k, which is amazing, as enables 2 extra attacks, 2 extra beefy attacks, as if it's a grade 3 or grade 2 or grade 1, doesn't matter, there will be a 10k higher base. And then on top of that, if there's certain dolls that actually gain power off of dolls existing on the board, those numbers will get even higher, so you can enable really crazy attacks. In case your opponent lands some defenses on you, this card says, let's fix that. Did you say you have a defense? Well, here is another card that will go over that defense. And here is a secondary attack that will do the same exact thing. This card is absolutely beautiful, very well engined. Last but not least, to finish up our grade 3s, I do run 2 Nightmare Doll Alice's. Nightmare Doll Alice does a similar thing to Chelsea, only with a cost. Her Vanguard skill says, when placed, you can take a doll from your soul and pop it back out. and thus that unit gets 5k. So in case you don't want to use your hand, or in case you're having a rough time, you can actually go into her. I don't recommend it. Not that saying you're gonna have a bad turn, but you're gonna have a harder turn versus if you have Carroll turn. And her other skill says, as a rear guard, at the end of the battle she attacked, you can counter blast Soul Blast, and you can put herself into Soul to call a non-grade 3 out of Soul. So you can't loop her like that, but you can actually loop other attacks. You can enable multi-attacks. So I actually use this card mainly for multi-attacking and doing other things, resetting my grade 1 setup, and I'll talk about that later. You can reset your board a little bit with this card. I honestly have thought about putting it at 4, but I think 2 is just still like a better spot, as I think we do need some kind of shield value, and also seeing too many grade 3s can end you in a game loss. So I've been keeping it at 2. It is kind of costly, as if you were to do this into this, that's 2 counter blasts, and yes, we have a counter charger, but this is just a better option. So you don't want to always use Alice. Alice is a very like if or maybe type of situation. Big maybe card, but should we still run her because she is a doll and she does enable Carroll's skill, as she does put herself into Soul. She is also a grade 3, and that utilizes that whole engine. Grade 2 Marissa. So this is Nightmare Doll Marissa. Amazing card. Says when placed from hand, put a card from your hand to Soul. So keep in mind, you can loop with Carroll. So if you have 2 Carrolls in your hand, you can actually put a Carroll to Soul, instantly enabling that multiple loop Carroll. So you can keep looping with Carroll now that she's in Soul. But yeah, that's another thing. But you can also put an important piece into Soul, something that you can then bring back out again. So maybe you can bring out another grade 2 or another grade 1. Like any piece that you may want to see back on the board, you can actually use that with this skill. But anyway, best part about this card is after that. So you put a card to Soul, and then it states, look at top 7 cards like your deck and pick out 1 grade 3 and 1 grade 1 from among them and put it into your hand. And yes, that's it. It's pretty much free for the cost of 1 card. You can potentially get 2 back. Now granted, one's a grade 3, one's a grade 1, but still, you can't loop herself. You can't pick up grade 2s, but you can pick up a grade 3 or a grade 1. You can pick up both. If you only see 1, you pick up 1, whatever. Regardless, it's usually a +1. Sometimes it's just a break even, but this card literally deck thins. It straight up deck thins. If you were able to enable all 4 of these or get 2 or 3 off, you're going to be landing triggers like a crazy person. So this card's just nice. It sets up your Soul. Once you get your rise, which is really important, as missing Carroll is probably a big deal. If you miss Carroll, you're going to have a really tough time. Going to Chelsea over Carroll is not a good situation. And just in general, just seeing Carroll first is better. And this card kind of helps push that so that way you don't miss your Carroll. Is Nightmare Doll Elin. I've been playing this card before and I'm playing it now. It is a costly counter blast, but this card is just beautiful. This is your grade 2 rush turn if you want to have it. Her skill says when it attacks, you counter blast 1, put a one of your other workways into Soul. You draw a card and you get 10k power. So she lets you draw. She lets you put other stuff into Soul. So if you have other cards you want in Soul, we'll talk about those cards. Yeah, we haven't really seen them yet. Other cards you want in Soul, you can put them in. And then on top of that, she gets 10k and you draw a card. It is a counter blast, but keep in mind, you can put a grade 3 into Soul. Just so if you have a Carroll out on the board, she will put that Carroll in, enabling a restand. So sometimes you'll in your top 5 off a Carroll, you'll see a Carroll. And if you're like, oh, what the heck do I do with this? She doesn't put herself into Soul. Well, we have other cards that do that. So you can actually enable that. It does require 2 counter blasts, but in case you have nothing else, you can still do this interaction. I believe it's Rhoda. Sorry if I got it a little wrong. Rhoda's skill is very simple. When placed, for every Vanguard and Rearguard doll, she gets an extra 2k, not including herself. So as long as you have dolls on the board, she stacks 2k. So if you have 6, you get 12,000. If you have 7, you get 14,000, and so on and so forth. It just keeps stacking. And this is one of the cards that you want in your Soul as quickly as possible, or you can get it and then put it into Soul through Beverly, or just ride it if you want to. Do whatever you need. You want this card in your Soul, as this enables that Chelsea engine. Very beautiful, and it just kind of sets up the board for you very nicely. So this is a really good card. As late game, this card is just absolutely brutal, as you're going to have a whole board of dolls, and this number will just get higher and higher with each doll you put in. Next, I run a Jumping Jill. Jumping Jill interacts very well with Alice, and if you happen to run more Alices, then I can actually recommend putting more Jumping Jills in. So her skill says when placed from Soul, put another rearguard into Soul, and then call a card out. By the way, the same rearguard you put into Soul, you can also bring that same rearguard out. Keep in mind, it is only to back row, so you can only put them to the back row, and it has to be a non-grade 2. So it can be a grade 3 or a grade 1, but it's going to go to the back row. So if you were to boost with your Carroll, go into Alice, bring your Jumping Jill out, and then take the booster from Carroll, put it back in, and then bring it back out. So that way you have another booster for another Vanguard swing. I'll explain what this actually looks like a little bit later. I don't think this interaction is like spot on, like key. That's why I only run like 2 copies of Alice and 1 copy of Jumping Jill. I think other interactions are a little bit more important right now, but I do think that this interaction is very nice, as you can reset a column, because you can also call her out and then call a grade 1 back here, and then you can start a column. But sometimes it's hard to empty out your rearguards to where you have that column, so that's why this is just a very If you see it in soul, if you soul charge or whatever, cool. If you don't, it's fine. 1 Armoreth Beast Tamer. I used to run 2, but I actually cut it back for something else. So the reason why I run this card, very simply, it says when it attacks a Vanguard, put a Vanguard to soul, and she gets an extra 3k. Now that sounds very like whatever, so she becomes a 12k base. The thing about this card is that there's no restriction here. Doesn't say what kind of card you put in, you just put in whatever the heck you want. So it empties out a rearguard circle, which is insanely important, as you want those empty rearguard circles open for potentially other attacks. But another thing's really good is that this makes this card better, makes your Chelsea's better, it makes your Carroll better. It's not, there's no counterblast behind this card. So in case you don't have your Chelsea out or your Alice out, or again, if you have another Carroll out, so say you brick a little bit, you can use this card to put a grade 3 to soul and then still do a Carroll restand. You can also do other unique things. You can put stuff into soul that you want into soul. So say you call out a Jumping Jill and then you want it back into soul, you can use this card to bring Jumping Jill back into soul. Say you have your Rhonda out and you can't get her into soul, this card says, hey, put it back into soul so that way you can then reuse it again with Chelsea. There's so many times where I've interacted with this where I would call this out, the Rhonda out through, I just call it out and I would start my turn and I would put this in to, by the way, I'm still on Carroll. I would use this skill to put her in after she already attacked. And then with Chelsea, I would just bring her back out. Like, it's just so easy how easily, and that's really solid because that means that you're attacking twice with a really beefy card. So that's why I really like, I'm still debating if I want to bring it back to 2 and maybe lower on a Beverly. But the only thing that sucks about this card is that it's not a workoid at all. So it does not work with any of the other engines, meaning with Carroll, you can't put her into soul, not that you really want to. Chelsea, same condition, you can't bring her out. And the other thing is Marissa is that when you search for stuff, you can't actually bring this out. It's a grade 2 anyways, you wouldn't bring it out anyway, but that's the only thing I like about this card. Same with the workoid, with Elin. With Elin, you can't use, you can't bring this in. It kind of sucks. That's the only downside to this card. Abagail is part of the new stuff. If you guys need to know like the new stuff, it's Abagail, Marissa, and Chelsea. Abagail's skill says Vanguard, when placed, you soul charge, just an extra soul charge. But her better skill is honestly her rearguard skill. It says at the end of the turn, so at the end of your turn, after all your attacks and everything, you can retire her, and then you can counter charge. And if your Vanguard is a workoid, you counter charge. And then her other skill says you can take a workoid from your soul and bring it back to hand. So say you have 2 Carrolls in soul, you can actually just bring one back. And now you have a Carroll for your next ride, and so on and so forth. Or you want to bring a Chelsea back to hand, you can do that, so that we can call Chelsea back out. It pretty much just makes this engine a lot better, as it is a grade 3, and it's pretty much like a Lucier skill to where you get your grade 3 back every return, so you don't have to worry about missing your ride or not having enough Excel markers. You'll always have a ton of Excel markers. This card just makes it better. And by the way, if you have 2 of these out, you can retire both of them, counter charge twice, and do the skill 2 times if you want, and so on and so forth. Next, I run Nightmare Doll Beverly. Beverly is actually really awesome. Her skill says when another workoid is placed in the same column as her, so something like this. So if you were to place something here, she says she gets 5k. And actually in this case, it would actually work both ways. It would be this girl, they would each give each other 5k essentially. But pretty much when a worker is placed in the circle in front of her, she gets 5k. So what's really nice is you can start with small attacks. You can, put the Chelsea there, swing with the Chelsea. Chelsea, opens up the rearguard circle, and you can call something else out there, like a Rhonda, and the Rhonda would get that 5k on top of its own skill. So this just amplifies extra power. It's pretty much acting like an Excel circle. It makes it so that you don't have to place things on your Excel circles if your Excel circles are full, but it's just overall a really good booster. On top of that, if you were to place her behind Vanguard, every single time you ride your Vanguard, that Vanguard gets an additional 5k. So this card is just overall an amazing card. 3 Nightmare Doll Edith is the exact same skill as the grade 2 Rhoda. The only difference is that it's a grade 1. Now you might be asking, well, why do I run 3 of these and only 2 of these? Honestly, if I could probably run 3 and 3. However, this is a grade 1 and Marissa searches for grade 1s and grade 3s. The chance of you hitting this is a lot more likely. If you put 3 of these, then that means you're gonna hit this less because you can't search for this, so you just have to find it. Whereas these you'll hit, and they have a very similar skill. It's almost the exact same. So as long as you have these in, it's just a good, this is better for defense obviously because you can intercept with this, but you will search this out a lot faster, and that's why I run 3 of these and 2 of these. Next, I run 1 copy of Silverthorn Handle Grip Linnea. Now, you might be wondering, why the heck am I running a Silverthorn unit in a Nightmare Doll deck? I've been running this card, the Butterfly to Moonlight set, where this card came out, and I instantly put it in. This card says, when it attacks or boosts, you soul charge, and she gets 5k. It's a 13k attacker, which means it deals with force numbers really well, and force is an issue against dolls. Any type of force can kind of be kind of rough because your numbers don't hit unless you put boosters down, and if you don't get your boosters, well, then you're not going to have a good time. So I run this card to kind of help with that, as it gives 5k on attack or boost, and it's a soul charge. Sometimes your soul isn't that great, and this kind of helps replenish that soul. 1 Nightmare Doll Maroon. Maroon's skill says when a Vanguard workoid is placed, that isn't written on her. So if she's a grade 1 and you ride a grade 2, she doesn't come out. But if you ride a grade 3, whatever it is, this pops out. It just pops out and becomes pretty much another attacker. So she just comes out of soul and she just becomes another attacker, another booster, whatever you want. Run her because it's just an extra attack that your opponent may not see coming. And they're gonna be like, oh my god, I didn't know this was a thing. You know, they don't think about this card too much because it's like you see it once, they're like, okay, whatever. But then she pops out, like you could pop her out on Chelsea's turn. Like you could go from Carroll, and by the way, you already did probably like 2-3 attacks, and go into Chelsea, you do a couple more attacks. And then when you ride the Chelsea, you can pop this out then. And then your opponent's like, wait a second, because you could just put this on an accel marker. And if your opponent hasn't landed a defense yet, this is another 13k attacker on accel marker. So it's literally just another attack they have to think about. So I run 3 of the draw sentinel, and I do run 1 of the crit sentinel, as I think crits are very spicy in this deck. Now you might be thinking like, oh, well, you don't want to crit your opponent too much. Well, what's nice about this is that sometimes seeing this early is actually really good, as you can push your opponent on your grade 2 rush pretty quickly, but also it's a 30k shield value, just really nice. And like I said, a lot of people will think that you only run fronts, and having that edge case crit, like they'll say no guard, and then suddenly they're taking like 2-3 damage. And then they're like, oh crap, I didn't want to take that much damage, because a lot of people assume that dolls just runs fronts, but you can actually get away with running a little bit of crit and a little bit of front. You can just be like a little extra spicy, and I like the spice. So I've always ran a little bit of crit, and then I have my 4 heals, and then here's my other crits. I run 3 more crits, so 4 crit total. And then I run some fronts, 5 fronts total. I think fronts can really finish off a game. However, I do think crits can do kind of a similar thing. If you're like kind of on the edge case and you have 2 more attacks or whatever, Chelsea into a crit can kind of go to GG. Sometimes your opponent will want to pass it, you land a crit, it's GG. Just overall, just really nice engine. I think having the splash of both is just very unique and very fun, and you can really push your opponent to a death. This deck at 4 or 5 damage is extremely lethal. The more attacks you can get, the quicker your opponent's gonna die, because your opponent only has so much hand. If they're at 5 damage, they're dying. Like they're probably dying, because the only thing that they can save themselves at that point is literally a heal. So I should mention, you know, the starter, you need a starter, your quick shield. I have the Pale Moon quick shield. You have accel 1. There really is no reason to ever go into accel 1, but you can if you choose to. Honestly, accel 2 is gonna be always the way. And while accel 1 is nice for the extra lethality or whatever, you are literally minusing yourself like crazy, and there's never going to be a situation where you're going to want to go accel 1 and minus yourself, because you're just going to die next turn. So the reason why I say that is you have to discard 2 cards for Carroll's skill. In accel 2, you can actually draw back your cards you discard. In accel 1, you will minus every single time you ride. Now granted, if you are in a situation where you're going to die, and say your opponent pushes you to 5 or something, and you just have nothing else up your sleeve, maybe going accel 1 is the goal. If your opponent's on 2 low damage and you just want to make sure that even through a defense things will hit, maybe, but 9 out of 10 times, and I would say 9.9 times out of 10 times, you're gonna probably go into accel 2, as this is just the better, just the better approach. I'm gonna start with the grade 2 rush, and then I'll go into some other things. So probably one of my favorite things to do early on is you start like this, you ride, you call Beverly over here. Then you call out Elin, which gives Beverly another extra 5k. Then you call this out, which states, you know, you get powered for all your workoids. So you get 1, 2, 3. So you give her 6k, making her 15. And then you just start rushing them. So you go here, you swing at their face, and then you go here, and then you swing at their face, and you win whatever. It could be a I have my thing upside down. You win whatever. It could be a front. It could be whatever you need. Doesn't really matter. Then you go this way. This is my favorite part. So this alone is already 21. You use her skill. You Counterblast 1. You put this into Soul, which secures, you know, for future stuff, as this card's really good. And then she gets an extra 10k. So this is now a 31k attacking rear guard. And this early on, this is actually very brutal. We're going to pretend that you like just rode Carroll. So you always want to start with your marker. You get your accel marker, you draw, and then you do her top skill, which enables you to look at top 5. And this one's upside down. And look at that, we did get an Alice. So, I mean, we did get a Chelsea. So you want to go ahead and just call this Chelsea out, like just straight off the bat. And then you put the other, you know, 4 on top or whatever, and then you shuffle through and call it a day. Now, what's really interesting about this is now you just have your insta setup for a potential restand off of your Chelsea and things. And another thing to keep in mind is having boosters is pretty important, so you'll make sure your boosters are pretty stacked. But if you have something like this is like a pretty solid board. You can, if you want, you have kind of a lot of options here. So you always want to start with swing with your Vanguard, because your Vanguard is what's restanding. So you always want to swing here. Keep in mind the Beverly's out here is actually like a little bit of a higher number, but you swing it at them, you know, you do your drive check, you know, whatever. Now here comes the fun part. You can go straight into Chelsea. Your opponent does whatever. Her skill says put herself as a soul, put an opponent's unit to soul. Because you did that interaction, now Carroll's skill activates. So you can counterblast, drop 2 cards, and you can actually restand with another Carroll. And then you can get another accel marker, which is what we're gonna do here. And then you draw off of that accel marker, and now you're looking at top 5 again. I didn't really shuffle this or anything. Top 5 again, and you get any doll, and you can put it into soul. So I would recommend putting something like that into soul. Your Edith, because you want to. Your grade 3 is the only thing that pops out, but you still actually can put whatever you want into soul. So that's really nice. And then you want to swing with like your Vanguard first. So you go in with your Vanguard. You know, they do whatever. You do 1 drive check from this point on. Cool. You get power. Draw a card. You can now go into with this Chelsea. And you can do the same thing again. So you can use her stuff, you can put her into soul, and now you can counterblast and you can restand another time. Now, granted, we don't have any more grade 3s in soul, so this will probably be your last restand. But so you drop your 2 cards, whatever you want them to be, and then you restand with the Chelsea this time, going in with yet another accel marker. You draw a card, and now you can have a party with your Chelsea. You can go straight in with her. This time you'll probably boost. They say whatever. You only have 1 check, so wow, another draw. I probably have the super badly shuffled, and then you can counterblast, and if they are on grade 3, you can actually call out your dolls. So this is when, you know, you can call out this doll, make it very lethal, and then you can actually call out this doll, make it extra lethal. So now this doll is going to get extra power off of all your work weights. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So she gets an extra 10k on top of her 10k, and she'll actually do the same thing. She'll get an extra 10k on top of her 10k. So each of these got a 20k buff, and this got an extra 5k buff off of this being in the back. So then you can just swing and swing and swing and have kind of like a party with it. So it's a really cool card, really cool stuff. And then if you have like one of these out at the very end, you can, at the end of your turn, you can retire this, countercharge, and then bring a Carroll back to your hand. So that way, let's pretend it's your turn again. You don't have to stay on Chelsea. If it's your turn again, you can actually go straight into another Carroll and grab yet another accel marker, because we didn't have enough of those, right? And then you can do the same skill again. You can look at top 5, and look at that. We got yet another doll. We got another doll, which means, guess what, guys? We're restanding today. Or you can just, you can even loop actually into Alice herself, because in this situation we're actually at a counterblast. You can loop into Alice and then bring back a Chelsea out, and then that way you have another board going that way. She doesn't extra 5k. So it's just kind of crazy like how much you can do, how many interactions you can just explore with this deck. Now let's go into talking about Jumping Jill. All right, so we have another board here, another different board. So we're gonna talk about Jumping Jill. Jumping Jill is currently in our soul. I'm gonna go ahead and make my counterblast all open again. So you can go again, go with you can actually boost. So remember in my other parts I was saying you can boost. Now you can boost. So you can boost, do your drive check, do whatever, and then you can attack with this card, and then you can counterblast, soul blast. You can put her into soul, bring out Jumping Jill, and then use Jumping Jill's skill to bring this into soul like this, and then use the same card to bring it back out, enabling you to have a booster. Now what's awesome about this is that now when you were to counterblast to restand with your Carroll, when you restand with the Carroll, this Carroll now gets an additional 5k, and you can boost again. So now you not only do you get an extra attack, but now you also get your booster back. And that's the Jumping Jill mechanic. And you can also do that with your rears too. You can pop a rear in, and then bring it back out. So in case you don't have something here, you can actually restand your boosters as well like that. So last but not least, I want to talk about Marissa and some things you can get away with. It's kind of risky, but with Marissa's skill, you place her from hand, and then you say, then you put a card from here into soul. If you have a Carroll in your soul, in your hand, you can actually start your loop early and just put her into soul. And then you look at top 7. And would you look at that? We got, that's actually, I swear I didn't intend to do that. But so in this situation, you can bring out 2 grade 3s because you can't bring out the grade 2s. So you can grab a Carroll and a Chelsea. And now you have both your Carroll, you have your Carroll set up for your ride line, but you also have your Chelsea set up, and you have the Carroll in soul. So when you, later on, when you ride on Carroll and you have to do your stuff, you instantly have your loop just ready to go, to where if you want to loop into Carroll, you 100% can and not have to worry about missing that in case you want to restand more than 2 times. And that's pretty much all I have for all the stuff that I want to talk to you guys about how the deck works, and just some like little mechanics and things that you can do with it. So let's go ahead and switch back to my main screen. So I'm back on my main screen here. I hope you guys enjoyed that deck profile. Hope it was helpful to you, and I hope the little interactions kind of help you want to build a deck. And it's not that expensive, by the way. I know I mentioned this a lot, but this is another one of those decks that it will cost you a little bit less to get everything, as all the boss units are pretty cheap. Other than that, guys, it's been real. It's been fun. Buffachu has been in the background doing Buffachu things. I love all the support, guys. I've been getting more and more recently. Really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions or decks or profiles or anything that you're doing, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. You can also join my Discord down there. We are a really awesome community full of very fun stuff. We're having a blast in there, and you can join in with us having a blast in there. So feel free to see that as well. Other than that, guys, as always, thank you for everything. Send love and all that stuff. Peace out, guys. Das vidanya, and see you guys next time. Bye.